Hello, and welcome to Healthy Kingston, a health promotion and wellness program of the Kingston Board of Health. I'm your host, Janet Wade. Well, Happy New Year. And it's been a very cold one. And with that in mind, a lot of the bogs around here have frozen over, as well as the ponds. And I just want to mention a couple of safety tips for everyone. Keep in mind that it's important that the ice be at least 4 inches deep. And that also there are springs that run under a number of the ponds, and that water is warmer. It can be even up to 53 degrees. And those areas, the ice would be thinner if there's ice there at all. So it's important to keep that in mind and know your boundaries when you're skating or ice fishing on some of the ponds and the bogs around here. Secondly, it would probably be a good idea to go out and skate with someone else. So in the event that anything would happen, you've got somebody there who can contact help. I also want to let you know that the health agent has asked me to remind everyone that if you're having your septic tank cleaned out this year, that it is important that you use a certified company and that they have a list, and you are more than welcome to call the health department to make sure that the company that you're using is valid. Another point I'd like to make is respiratory illnesses are at a high nationwide level. As of January 13th, the amount of acute respiratory illness causing people to seek health care is at a high level. Particularly COVID-19, the flu, and RSV activity are very high in many areas of the country. As we all know, but it bears repeating, it's important that we use constant hand washing, good nutrition, get sufficient sleep and exercise, cover coughs, treat the symptoms as they occur, and isolate if you're not feeling well. And obviously, if you have symptoms or you're going into a group of people where you're fearful of contacting any of these illnesses, it would behoove you to use a mask. This program, we're going to be concentrating on, I'm a mom, now what? The birth of a baby can start a variety of powerful emotions, from excitement and joy to something you might not even expect, and that's depression. Most new moms experience postpartum baby blues after children, which spells anxiety and difficulty sleeping. Baby blues usually begin within the first 2 to 3 days after delivering the baby, and they can last up to 2 weeks. But some new moms experience a more severe, long-lasting form of depression, known as postpartum depression. Sometimes it can actually start during pregnancy and continue after childbirth, and that's called perinatal depression. But rarely an extreme mood disorder called postpartum psychosis may also develop after childbirth. Postpartum depression is not a character flaw or a weakness. Sometimes it's simply a complication of giving birth. If you have postpartum depression, prompt treatment can help you manage your symptoms and help you bond with your baby. Feel very fortunate in that we have a tremendously qualified nurse to speak with us today about postpartum depression and particularly psychosis. Welcome, Justine Naper. Justine is an RN. She also has a master's degree in healthcare education. She has worked extensively in labor and delivery and postpartum. She's also been a childbirth educator, and she is currently an instructor at Silver Lake Regional High School in the Allied Health Profession track. Justine, so with all that said, can you delve a bit into postpartum psychosis? What is it? What causes it? The symptoms?
Okay, yes. Starting with what postpartum psychosis is, postpartum psychosis is a reversible but severe mental health condition that can affect women after they give birth. The condition is rare, but it is very dangerous. People with PPP or postpartum psychosis have a much higher risk of harming themselves, dying by suicide, or harming their children. This is why postpartum psychosis is a mental health emergency. Postpartum psychosis, how common is it? It's not very common. It's actually a rare condition. Experts say that it affects less than from 0.1 to 2.6 births out of every 1,000 births. So in the United States, that means 320 to 9,400 cases a year. Okay. So that's a pretty large span, but small number just the same. So it is rare. Experts don't know exactly what causes it, but some symptoms are, there's many symptoms. The two main symptoms that could affect a person are first, hallucinations. Hallucination is when your brain acts as if it's getting input from your senses, but there's no actual input. This is usually with your eyes and your ears, but can be with touch also. The things you see or hear feel real, and you cannot tell the difference between a hallucination and something that's happening in reality. The second one that's pretty common is delusions. These are false beliefs that the person holds on to with such strength because they believe it is absolutely true. If you have delusions, you hold these false beliefs so strongly that you won't change these beliefs, even if you've been given evidence, concrete evidence that show that it simply is false and not true. Some examples of this is believing someone is out to get you, feeling that you don't have control of your own body and then someone else is controlling your body, or even believing that you weren't pregnant or didn't even have a child. Some other symptoms could be mood changes and emotional disturbances, such as mood swings, agitation, or unusual emotional responses. Depersonalization, some people say they feel like they're having an out-of-body experience. Disorganized thinking or behavior. Insomnia, which is our inability to sleep. Impaired judgment and decision-making, making decisions that are irrational or based on distorted perceptions, and paranoia is a big one, feeling extremely suspicious or mistrustful of others, or thoughts of harming yourself or others, specifically your newborn.
Wow, those are scary symptoms. Those
Very
are
scary.
I would think they could be picked up fairly quickly by people in the household, partner.
Definitely. You hope that people have a strong support system and are listening to those things, because the person that's going through it cannot
They don't realize.
They don't realize that they are going through that.
Wow.
No.
And implications for the partner, other children in the household, I would imagine are pretty drastic.
They are drastic. Definitely some emotional strain on the partner, depression themselves, and they are, I'll talk a little bit later after I talk about causes of postpartum psychosis, about what it can do to the children.
Okay. So what do you do? How do you handle this?
You handle it first by knowing what causes it. Okay, so the causes of both postpartum depression and postpartum psychosis are complex and they're still not fully understood. Women likely develop these conditions due to a combination of genetics, patterns of the brain, and exposure to stress and trauma. Definitely we're under a tremendous amount of stress after we've had a baby. Researchers have looked at postpartum psychosis and have tried to make links. Some factors that can contribute to it are a history of mental health conditions such as bipolar, schizophrenia, or even major depressive disorder. But women don't necessarily have to have those things to end up with postpartum psychosis. Postpartum psychosis is more common in the first-time mom, but you have a 30 to 50% chance of having postpartum psychosis if you had it with your first pregnancy. So future pregnancies. So that's a little
But I guess
difficult.
obviously the advantage would be, as you know, you've had a history of that, so
Yes.
it could be
Yes.
detected and treated a lot
Exactly.
quickly.
Definitely knowing, having a history. If you have any of these other mental health conditions, definitely making sure your doctors are aware so you get treatment during the pregnancy and they can watch you closely.
And what kind of treatment are we talking about?
We're talking about usually with postpartum psychosis, because it is so rare and such a medical emergency, that they will be hospitalized, inpatient hospitalization. That does not mean it's normally voluntary. It's usually involuntary because the person doesn't believe that they have anything wrong. So, your loved ones paying attention. Treatment includes the in-hospitalization. inpatient, and they treat with medications, types of therapy, one specifically being cognitive behavioral therapy, and also electroconvulsive treatment. I know, there's a lot of negative connotation over the years through books and movies that we've seen, but ECT is a very safe and effective treatment. People need to realize that doesn't happen while you're awake. You're put under general anesthesia, and the person will feel no pain. Just sends a mild electrical currents through the brain.
So the period of treatment typically goes on for how long? I mean, people recover from this.
Absolutely, it is curable. Yep. So, the treatment is, every person is different in how they respond to, medications, but where it is such a medical emergency, they're going to make sure you're stable before you're going to get discharged.
Okay. If you would, I'd like you to speak about prevention, particularly in light of the fact that there might be a history of mental illness in the family, or someone might have suffered from postpartum depression in a previous pregnancy. What can be done to help prevent it from being an issue in the future?
Great question. Definitely, it may not be possible to entirely prevent postpartum depression or postpartum psychosis entirely, but supporting a person's mental health during the prenatal, intrapartum, and the postpartum period is important. Some ways we can do this is through prenatal care, making sure you regularly attend your prenatal appointments, being honest with your physician about your physical and emotional well-being, definitely having good social support system in place prior to delivery. We're having a plan, like a postpartum plan, for, your needs for self-care, assisting with childcare, making sure that you can stay healthy in every way possible, getting enough sleep, proper nutrition.
Right.
And
like reaching out for help when you need it.
Absolutely,
Right,
reaching out for help when you need it.
Yeah.
Self-care, I can't stress that enough. Definitely sleep. We talked about, an early intervention, recognizing the early signs of postpartum depression and psychosis, and seeking professional help immediately, whether that's calling 911 or, calling your obstetrician. They have, great resources.
Earlier in our discussion, you mentioned the impact on family members, children, caregivers, partners. Can you speak to that, please?
Yes. So postpartum psychosis can have serious consequences for children and the other parents, including suicide, the death, of the new neonate or the infant, and neglect of other children, including the newborn. So, some complications for the children are emotional and behavioral problems. Children may have difficulty sleeping and eating. They might cry too much, or they may have delays in language development. They also may have physical and psychological development problems. Children may have worse outcomes if their mother has untreated postpartum depression or psychosis. Some complications for the other parent is most definitely emotional strain. The other parent may experience emotional strain from being the primary caregiver to not only their partner, but all the children, and the newborn. And they also have their own increased risk of depression due to the stress and trauma.
I know you mentioned to me recently that you suffered from postpartum depression, and very much appreciate the fact that you're willing to share your story. So any enlightenment you could give us, we'd appreciate it.
This is something that is near and dear to my heart. Luckily, I did not have postpartum psychosis, but most definitely had postpartum anxiety and depression. Looking back now, I can see that this was with my youngest child. I have two boys. My youngest child about 6 years ago. He's 6 now. And I had significant anxiety during the pregnancy, to the point I had two physicians. My high-risk doctor, I would see much more often than my normal obstetrician, was very concerned about it and was watching me closely. And after, I definitely had postpartum blues, for a couple days, but then it continued, and it seemed to get worse. I was depressed, I was anxious, I was scared to be alone with my children. I was sad. I just felt not comfortable in my own skin. And, being a nurse and have already had another child, I felt like more than capable of taking care of my children. but I was definitely questioning myself. I remember a point in time where I asked my husband not to leave me alone with the kids and to, watch me very closely. So we had a discussion. I have a great support system. I'm lucky to have that. We had definitely a discussion about, was I thinking about harming myself or my children? That was never something that I went through, luckily. But I knew that I was bad enough and had enough anxiety and depression postpartum that I actually called and put myself in a partial hospitalization program, a day program in Rhode Island. It's one of the best in the country. And I was with women who really had some scary thoughts. Intrusive thoughts is, a major part of that. And being with them and listening to their story, I would go every day. I could bring my newborn if I liked, or they could stay home with Dad. He often came with me because they had group therapy with women. That sense of support that you're not alone was very helpful. Mm-hmm. Many psychiatrists, medical doctors, finding the right medication that can work for you, along with therapy.
So who actually interceded? Was it a family member, or did you realize that you needed help, or both? Or I guess basically suggestions on how loved ones can intervene in a positive way that will be well received.
Absolutely. In my case, it was a conversation. I realized it along with my husband realized it, so it was a conversation between us together, and a decision was made that I would go to this program. I was able to come home every night, which is you can do with postpartum anxiety and depression, and you can get treatment outpatient. Where postpartum psychosis is definitely different, where it's a true medical emergency, usually requiring inpatient hospitalization. Definitely, if you feel like you or your loved one has any of those symptoms, I would say stay calm. Don't try to, heighten the emotion. Be aware that they don't fully always believe or have an idea that they have postpartum psychosis. Don't argue with them because that's not, helpful. Seek out support. Like I said, even if that means calling 911, calling their obstetrician, and try not to judge. Mm-hmm.
All good points. So I would say in summary of this discussion, postpartum depression and psychosis, very real.
Very real.
Large percentage of women particularly experience postpartum depression. It's not a personality flaw. No. It's not a weakness.
Definitely not.
It's something that should be taken care of and addressed quickly before it can deteriorate into something more serious. Mm-hmm. Is there anything else you would like to share?
Just kind of following up with what you're saying. It could be hormone imbalances. It could be autoimmunity. It could be, we might not even know the cause, but knowing that there's nothing wrong with you, that doesn't make you a weaker person. No one's judging you. And I think as a society, there's been a lot of social stigma about mental health in the past, but I think we've come a long way, and there's such great resources out there. I'll be able to reach out for them. Even if that means that someone's seeing this TV show and reaches out to me, I'm certainly happy to help. But your obstetrician, therapy services, anywhere that can get you help. But if you are having thoughts of hurting yourself or others, that's a 911 call.
Good way to end. Thank you so much, Justine.
Thanks for having me.
Really appreciate it.
It's been great.
And we'll be having Justine coming back in the spring with some of her students to tell us more about the Allied Health Profession program at Silver Lake High School. So thank you for all you do for our community.
Thank you.
Much appreciated.
My pleasure.
Okay. Take care, stay happy, stay healthy in the new year.